What if your closest friend turned into a tree, and you were the one who made it happen? What if you had the power to transform the life of someone you loved into something unrecognizable, something that would never walk again, never speak again? What price does jealousy demand in a world where magic is real, and curses are cast with a single act of betrayal? Can one twisted emotion, one dark desire, reshape destiny forever? Beneath the surface of every community, there are stories under the smiles and laughter. Old stories. Stories of magic, of curses, of vengeance. The kind of stories you hear whispered around the fire, in the dead of night, when the stars themselves seem to watch in silence. But there is one story, a story of love lost, of a betrayal so deep it could never be forgotten. A story where jealousy does not merely linger, it takes root and grows. And in its shadow, life is forever changed. Tonight, we tell a tale from the heart of Africa, where magic flows through the land like the rivers that carve the earth. A tale that begins with two women, friends since childhood, sharing everything. Laughter, dreams, and even the love of one man. But what happens when one of them can no longer hide the secret that has taken root in her heart? What happens when the bond of friendship is shattered by something far darker than words can express? This is the story of Amina, a woman who believed in love, in trust, in the goodness of others. She was about to marry Tund, the man of her dreams, the man she had loved since they were children. Their union, a symbol of everything beautiful in the world, was meant to be the beginning of a bright future. But behind the smiles, there was someone who watched them with a heart filled not with love, but with a desire so strong, it threatened to consume her entirely. Kemi. Amina's closest friend. The one who had stood by her through every trial, every joy. But Kemi had always been hiding something that no one knew about. Something buried deep within her. A secret love that had festered for years, unnoticed by Amina. It was a love so unspoken, so impossible, that Kemi couldn't bring herself to voice it, to share it, and yet it shaped everything she did. It shaped everything she became. Kemi's heart had longed for Tund, but she had always kept her feelings locked away. She watched Amina, her best friend, glowing with happiness, knowing that the man she loved would soon be hers, while Kemi stood in the shadows. She told herself that this was what true friendship meant, that it was enough to stand by and watch Amina find joy. But deep inside she felt something stirring, something dark, something she couldn't control. A feeling that no amount of time or restraint could suppress. But what happens when a heart, weighed down by jealousy, can no longer stay silent? What happens when love, true love, becomes an obsession? Possession? What happens when the bonds of friendship are shattered, not by words, but by a dark desire that cannot be quenched? The answer is simple: a curse is born. This tale does not end with a wedding. It does not end with the joy of celebration. It begins the night before the wedding, when the wind carries a whisper through the trees, and magic stirs beneath the earth. For there are forces in this world, hidden, ancient, that can change the course of history, the course of lives. And sometimes all it takes is a single act, a single choice, to unleash something so powerful, it cannot be undone. In the darkness, a choice was being made. Kemi, driven by a love that had turned toxic, would stop at nothing to claim what she believed was hers. But what she did not know, what she could not know, was that the price of this act of betrayal would be far higher than she could ever imagine. And the consequences of her jealousy would be felt not just in this life, but beyond it. And so we begin. This is the story of Amina and Kemi. Of love, betrayal, and a curse that would change everything. Amina, with her radiant smile and gentle soul, was the pride of the village. Everyone adored her, from the elders who sought her wisdom to the children who eagerly followed her every step. Her laughter was like music, carrying through the village, touching every heart it met. On the eve of her wedding, the village was alive with excitement. Amina was about to marry Tund, the man she had loved since childhood. The entire village awaited the moment when the two would join together, a union so pure, so destined, it seemed as though the earth itself had conspired to bring them together. But among all the joy and celebration, there was one who stood in silence. Kemi, Amina's closest friend, shared every moment with her, every secret, every laugh. The bond between them had always been strong and unbreakable, or so it seemed. Kemi, the quiet one, had always been the keeper of her friend's heart. She had always stood by Amina just as Amina had stood by her. But as the wedding day drew near, a change began to stir inside Kemi's heart, a change she couldn't easily explain, a feeling she had never allowed herself to acknowledge. Kemi had always loved Tund, but she had never spoken of it. It was a secret, locked away deep inside her heart, a love that she had convinced herself would remain unspoken, unnoticed. She told herself that the love she held for him was pure, a quiet affection, nothing more. But now, as Amina's wedding approached, that love had become something more. Something darker, something dangerous. It was a feeling that clawed at her chest, gnawing at her every thought. She couldn't deny it any longer. She loved him. She had always loved him. She tried to ignore it. She tried to convince herself that her love for Tund was nothing more than a fleeting thought, an idle fancy. But the closer Amina's wedding drew, the more the truth became undeniable. Her best friend was about to marry the man Kemi had secretly longed for, and that secret affection had turned into a seething jealousy, a jealousy that was like a fire in her soul, consuming everything it touched. And so, Kemi watched. She watched as Amina, her beautiful, kind-hearted friend, prepared for the wedding, radiant and unaware of the storm building within Kemi's heart. She saw how Tund's eyes sparkled when he looked at Amina. How he whispered sweet words to her, words that Kemi had once imagined hearing herself. Every touch between them felt like a cruel reminder of what Kemi could never have. Kemi had always told herself that her love for Tund was nothing compared to the friendship she shared with Amina. She had always placed Amina's happiness above her own, convinced herself that true friendship meant sacrificing her desires for the sake of the one she loved most. But now, that sacrifice had become too great, and Kemi felt herself drowning in a sea of unspoken words and longing glances. She could no longer pretend. She could no longer be the friend who stood by, quietly cheering for her friend's happiness while silently wishing for something she could never have. The village buzzed with joy as the wedding preparations continued, but for Kemi, it felt like a funeral. Amina's happiness seemed like a distant dream, one that belonged to someone else, someone who was not her. And in the shadows of that dream, a dark seed began to grow. A seed of jealousy, deep in her heart, nurtured by the love she could never claim. And like all seeds of envy, this one would soon bloom into something far more dangerous than Kemi could ever have imagined. Kemi had always been a friend, a devoted one. But as the days passed, she began to see her role differently. She no longer saw herself as Amina's loyal companion. Instead, she saw herself as someone who had been left behind, ignored, abandoned by fate. She could feel the weight of the jealousy settling deep in her chest. It was heavier than any burden she had ever known, a weight that pressed down on her heart, squeezing the life from her. And so, Kemi began to change. She watched from the sidelines, a shadow in the background, her heart hardening with every passing moment. She no longer smiled when Amina laughed. She no longer rejoiced when Tund's gaze lingered on Amina. Instead, she felt something dark grow inside her, something she could no longer control. She had spent years keeping her feelings hidden, but now, as the wedding approached, the darkness could no longer stay hidden. It demanded to be seen. It demanded to be heard. The jealousy had become a hunger, a gnawing ache in her soul that nothing could satisfy. And in that hunger, Kemi began to entertain thoughts she had never once considered. Thoughts of power, of control, of magic. And once those thoughts had taken root in her mind, there was no turning back. Kemi sought out the only place she knew where her longing could be satisfied, the old sorcerer in the forest. The one who was whispered about, feared, and yet sought after by those who needed more than what the world could offer. She knew what he could do. She had heard the stories, the tales of people who had gotten more than they bargained for, who had reached for power and had their lives changed forever. But at that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that she wanted Tund. She wanted him for herself. And she was willing to pay any price. What price would Kemi be willing to pay for the love she could never have? The answer was something only the sorcerer could reveal. But Kemi had already made her choice. The path before her was clear. And there was no turning back. The magic was real. And it would change everything. Jealousy is a poison. A slow, creeping poison that eats away at the heart. It starts as a small seed, buried deep within, unnoticed by all but the one who carries it. At first, it is easy to dismiss, just a passing thought, a fleeting feeling. But with time it grows. It spreads, twisting and turning until it consumes the very soul of the one who harbors it. And once it has taken root, it is almost impossible to remove. Kemi had spent years hiding it, this poison that gnawed at her heart, this jealousy that she could never quite suppress. She had convinced herself that it was nothing, that it was merely a passing fancy, a fleeting wish that would pass with time. But the closer Amina's wedding drew, the stronger the poison became. And now, it spilled out, unstoppable, filling every corner of her heart with a darkness she could no longer ignore. Why should she have everything? Why should she have him? Why is she the one who gets to marry him? I've spent my whole life standing by her, watching her shine, while I've been nothing but a shadow in her light. Why should she be the one to live this dream, when I am the one who has loved him all this time? If I cannot have him, neither will she. I will not let her have it all. I will not let her have the love I have longed for, the love that should have been mine. She is blind to what is truly hers, blind to the depth of his love. But I see it. I see it in the way he looks at her, in the way his hand fits perfectly in hers. And I see how she takes it for granted. She has no idea how lucky she is. 4 years, Kemi had kept her feelings buried deep within herself. She had hidden them behind the mask of friendship, behind the kindness and loyalty she showed Amina. But as the wedding drew near, she could no longer deny the truth. The jealousy that had once been a whisper in her heart had become a roaring storm, tearing at the very fabric of her being. It clouded her thoughts, darkened her soul, and filled her with a rage she could no longer control. If I can't have him, I will make sure she can't either. She will never see what she's lost, never know what it feels like to have him look at her the way he's looked at me. She's blind, and I will show her what it means to be left behind. Kemi knew that the path before her would demand something far greater than she had ever imagined. She had heard the stories of the sorcerer who lived in the heart of the forest, a man who could twist fate and bend magic to his will. People said he could grant any wish, any desire, but at a cost that could never be repaid. But Kemi, in her rage and her desperation, could not see the danger. She only saw the way forward, the way to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. She had come to a decision. She would take from Amina what she had always wanted. And in doing so she would change everything. The magic would bend to her will, and she would no longer be the friend in the shadows. No, she would be the one who stood in the light. She would be the one who walked away with what was meant to be hers. And as she finished the incantation, the world seemed to hold its breath. The wind stopped. The trees outside the hut stilled. A deep silence settled over the village as if the very earth had paused in anticipation of what was to come. Kemi had made her choice. There would be no going back. The curse was set. The poison of jealousy had begun to take root, and in its wake, it would leave only destruction. Under the cloak of night, when the world slumbers and the veil between realms thins, Kemi embarked on a journey that would alter the course of her life, and that of her friend, forever. Her heart, heavy with the weight of her intentions, led her through the dense, mist-enshrouded forest to the dwelling of the sorcerer, a man whose knowledge of the unseen world was both revered and feared. Legend spoke of the sorcerer's power to bend the fabric of reality, to grant desires that danced on the edge of morality. Yet, every gift he bestowed bore a shadow, a consequence that echoed through the lives of those who sought his aid. As Kemi approached his abode, the air grew thick with anticipation. The trees seemed to lean in, their whispers lost to the wind, but their presence undeniable. She stepped forward, each movement deliberate, her resolve hardening with every breath. From the shrouded entrance emerged the sorcerer, his presence commanding yet enigmatic. His eyes, gleaming with an ancient knowing, fixed upon Kemi, as if he had been expecting her all along. Kemi, her voice barely a whisper, spoke of her torment, the jealousy that gnawed at her insides, the love unrequited, and the friendship she felt slipping through her fingers. She laid bare her soul, her desires, and her willingness to pay any price to see her wishes fulfilled. The sorcerer listened intently, his gaze unwavering, his tone unyielding as he cautioned her. You wish to undo what fate has woven, to alter the tapestry of your existence. Be mindful, for the threads of destiny are delicate. Magic, especially that which meddles with the heart's desires, is a double-edged sword. Once the seed of jealousy is sown, its roots entwine deeply, and its fruits are often bitter. Driven by a singular focus, Kemi nodded, her determination masking the flicker of doubt that threatened to surface. She had come this far, there was no turning back. The sorcerer stepped back, his hands moving in a fluid, practiced motion as he prepared the spell. With a series of incantations, he wove the spell, his voice melding with the whispers of the forest. The air crackled with energy, the very ground beneath them seeming to pulse with the magic being unleashed. As the final words left his lips, a profound silence enveloped them, the forest holding its breath. It is done, the sorcerer murmured. But remember, the path you have chosen is fraught with peril. The curse will unfold in its own time, and its effects will be as unpredictable as the wind. Kemi, her face a mask of determination, turned and retreated into the forest, the weight of her actions settling heavily upon her shoulders. Little did she know, the wheels she had set in motion would lead to outcomes beyond her imagining, intertwining her fate with Amina's in ways she could never have foreseen. Kemi's fingers closed around the small vial, its contents shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The weight of her decision pressed heavily upon her chest, each heartbeat a reminder of the path she had chosen. The sorcerer's warning echoed in her mind. Once the seed of jealousy is sown, its roots entwine deeply, and its fruits are often bitter. Shaking off the unease, Kemi turned and began her journey back through the dense forest. The once familiar path now seemed foreign, the shadows stretching unnaturally as the moonlight fought to penetrate the thick canopy above. With each step, the forest seemed to close in around her, the air growing heavier, thick with the scent of damp earth and the whispers of unseen creatures. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in a symphony of murmurs. Kemi's senses heightened. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the underbrush set her on edge. The trees, ancient and towering, loomed like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches twisting into grotesque shapes in the dim light. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the forest, carrying with it a faint, melodic humming. Kemi froze, her breath catching in her throat. The sound was ethereal, otherworldly, and seemed to come from all directions. She glanced around, her heart pounding, but saw nothing. The humming ceased as abruptly as it had begun, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. Kemi's grip tightened around the vial, her knuckles white. She quickened her pace, eager to leave the unsettling presence of the forest behind. As she walked, the path began to narrow, the trees pressing closer together, their branches intertwining overhead, forming a canopy that blocked out the stars. The air grew cooler and the shadows deeper. Kemi's footsteps were the only sound, a rhythmic thud that did little to reassure her. Without warning, a figure stepped onto the path ahead, a tall, slender woman draped in flowing white robes, her face obscured by a veil. She stood motionless, blocking the way. Kemi's heart skipped a beat. She had heard tales of the forest spirits, guardians of the woods, but had never encountered one. The woman's presence was commanding, yet serene, an aura of ancient wisdom emanating from her. The woman spoke, her voice melodic, carrying an undertone of sadness. "Why do you tread this sacred path, child of man?" Kemi swallowed, her throat dry. "I seek to change my fate," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's veil fluttered as if stirred by an unseen wind. "Be careful what you seek," she intoned, "for the forest remembers and the forest judges." With that, the woman stepped aside, her form blending seamlessly into the shadows, leaving Kemi with a lingering sense of foreboding. She hesitated for a moment, then continued on her way, the vial still clutched tightly in her hand. The path eventually began to widen, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the trees thinned. Kemi emerged from the forest into the clearing near her village, the familiar sights and sounds bringing a semblance of comfort. Yet, the encounter with the forest spirit weighed heavily on her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that her actions were being watched and judged. As she approached her hut, the first light of dawn began to break, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Kemi entered her home, setting the vial on the wooden table. She stared at it, her reflection distorted in the shimmering liquid. The gravity of her decision settled upon her. There was no turning back now. Little did Kemi know, the events set in motion that night would unravel the very fabric of her existence, intertwining her fate with Amina's in ways she could never have imagined. Under the watchful gaze of the full moon, Kemi moved like a shadow, her heart pounding with each step. The village lay in peaceful slumber, unaware of the storm brewing in its midst. She approached Amina's hut, her every movement deliberate, her mind resolute. Standing over her friend, Kemi's gaze softened for a fleeting moment, but the resolve quickly returned. She had come too far to turn back now. As the potion seeped into the soil, the atmosphere thickened, charged with an energy both ancient and potent. The leaves outside rustled, though no wind stirred, and the air grew inexplicably colder. Kemi stepped back, her eyes fixed on Amina, who remained blissfully unaware of the dark magic unfolding around her. The village slept on, oblivious to the transformation taking place in the very soil beneath their homes. By dawn, Amina would awaken to a world irrevocably altered, her destiny rewritten by the hands of jealousy and betrayal. The sun rose, casting a golden hue over the village, its rays dancing on the thatched roofs and illuminating the vibrant fabrics adorning the huts. The air was thick with anticipation as villagers bustled about, preparing for the most awaited event of the season, Amina's wedding. The aroma of freshly baked bread and roasted meats wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of blooming flowers that decorated the pathways. Tun stood at the altar, his heart pounding with excitement and nerves. Dressed in a finely woven agbada, he scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for the radiant smile of his bride-to-be. But as minutes turned into hours, a creeping unease began to settle over him. The sun climbed higher and still there was no sign of Amina. The villagers, their faces painted with confusion and concern, gathered in small clusters, murmuring among themselves. Elders exchanged worried glances, sensing that something was amiss. The rhythmic drumming that was meant to usher in the bride remained silent, replaced by an eerie stillness that hung over the gathering. As the day wore on, search parties were dispatched to Amina's home and the surrounding areas. They called her name, their voices echoing through the empty streets, but there was no answer. Desperation began to seep into their voices as they scoured every inch of the village and its outskirts. Then near the edge of the forest they found it, a massive tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted, its branches heavy with sorrow. The leaves hung limp, devoid of their usual luster as if mourning a loss. At its base lay a delicate silver necklace, Amina's prized possession, glinting in the dappled sunlight. The news spread like wildfire and soon the entire village stood before the mysterious tree, their faces etched with disbelief and grief. Whispers filled the air, tales of curses and dark magic swirling among the crowd. The elders convened, their faces grim as they pondered the cause of this unnatural occurrence. Tund, his heart heavy with sorrow and guilt, approached the tree. He placed a hand on its rough bark, his voice breaking as he called out to Amina, begging for forgiveness, though he knew not the depth of the betrayal. Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered promises of love and devotion, hoping somehow she could hear him. Days turned into weeks, and the village fell into a somber routine, the joy of the wedding replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss. The tree remained, a silent sentinel to the tragedy that had befallen Amina. Villagers came to offer prayers and seek answers, but none came. The once thriving village now felt hollow, the absence of Amina's laughter and lightness a void that could not be filled. Kemi, consumed by guilt and remorse, withdrew from the village's daily life. She could no longer bear the accusing stares of her fellow villagers, nor the hollow silence that greeted her every attempt at normalcy. Each day she visited the tree, her eyes filled with remorse as she whispered apologies to the wind, hoping they would reach Amina's spirit. At night she dreamt of Amina, her friend's face twisted in pain and betrayal. Kemi would wake in a cold sweat, her heart racing, the images haunting her waking hours. She sought solace in the village's elders, hoping for guidance, but their words were heavy with reproach, offering no comfort. In a bid to address the calamity that had befallen their community, the village elders convened under the ancient baobab tree. They deliberated on the nature of the curse and sought ways to appease the spirits and restore balance. After much contemplation, they decided to perform a cleansing ritual, hoping to lift the curse and heal the rift caused by Kemi's envy. At dawn, the villagers gathered in the clearing, their faces marked with ash as a symbol of penitence. The elders led the ceremony, chanting prayers and offering sacrifices to the forest spirits. Kemi, at the heart of the gathering, pledged her remorse and sought forgiveness from Amina's spirit and the community. As the ritual reached its zenith, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the tree that bore Amina's likeness trembled. The villagers watched in awe as the bark began to peel away, revealing a lifelike statue of Amina beneath. Tears welled in Kemi's eyes as she approached the statue, her heart aching with sorrow and relief. In the days that followed, the village flourished. Amina's statue became a symbol of forgiveness and resilience, reminding all of the destructive power of jealousy and the healing power of forgiveness. Kemi, though forgiven, carried the weight of her actions, vowing to honor Amina's memory by fostering unity and love within the community. As the days passed, Kemi found herself drawn back to the tree, standing alone in the whispering wind. Her heart was a tumultuous sea, torn between the gnawing guilt that consumed her and a hollow sense of satisfaction that she dared not acknowledge. She had achieved what she thought she desired, Tund's affection, but at what cost? The very tree that stood before her was a testament to the irreversible path she had chosen, and the weight of its existence pressed heavily upon her conscience. With trembling hands she reached out, her fingers brushing against the rough bark as if seeking some form of connection or forgiveness. Her voice, barely a whisper, carried the weight of her remorse. Kemi desperately says, "Amina, please? I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted him to love me." In the solitude of the forest, Kemi's anguished whispers were swallowed by the wind, carrying her pleas into the vastness, unanswered. The reality of her actions began to settle in, each passing moment deepening the chasm of regret within her. Back in the village, the absence of Amina cast a long shadow over the community. The wedding preparations, once a source of joy, had transformed into a somber gathering of concerned villagers. Elders convened, their faces etched with worry as they discussed the inexplicable disappearance, saying this is no ordinary disappearance. The signs point to dark forces at play. We must seek guidance from the ancestral spirits. Only they can shed light on this mystery. Determined to uncover the truth, the elders organized a night-long vigil, offering prayers and sacrifices to the spirits, hoping for a revelation that would bring clarity and, perhaps, a resolution to the haunting enigma. Days melded into nights, and Kemi's visits to the tree became a ritual of penance. Each day she stood before it, her heart heavy with the burden of her guilt. The villagers, once her friends, now viewed her with a mixture of pity and disdain, their whispers following her every step. Isolated and shunned, Kemi's world shrank to the confines of the forest clearing. The weight of her actions bore down upon her, each day a reminder of the irreversible change she had wrought. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land, Kemi heard a rustling in the underbrush. Turning, she saw a figure emerging, a woman, her features obscured by a hooded cloak. Your heart is burdened, child. But know this, even the deepest darkness can be pierced by the smallest light. The woman's words, though cryptic, ignited a spark of hope within Kemi. Could redemption be possible? Could the path she had set in motion be altered? Determined to seek forgiveness and reverse the curse she had unleashed, Kemi embarked on a journey to find the legendary River of Souls, believed to cleanse and heal. Her path was fraught with challenges, treacherous terrains, wild beasts, and the haunting memories of her betrayal. With each step, Kemi shed layers of her former self, confronting her deepest fears and regrets. The journey was as much about the physical distance traveled as it was about the emotional and spiritual odyssey within. After days of relentless travel, Kemi reached the River of Souls. Its waters shimmered with an ethereal glow, and the air was thick with the scent of jasmine. Kneeling by its banks, she gazed into the reflective surface, seeing not just her image but flashes of Amina's laughter, Tun's smile, and the faces of the villagers. Spirits of the river, hear my plea. I have wronged my friend, my community, and myself. Grant me the chance to right my wrongs. The river remained silent, its surface unbroken. Yet, in the depths, Kemi sensed a stirring, a recognition of her sincerity perhaps, or a test yet to come. Empowered by her experience at the river, Kemi returned to the village, her resolve unwavering. She sought out the elders, confessed her transgressions, and proposed a communal ritual to honor Amina's memory and seek the forgiveness of the spirits. The village, though scared, recognized Kemi's genuine remorse. Together they prepared for the ritual, a blend of song, dance, and offerings, celebrating Amina's life and seeking healing for their collective wounds. The ritual was transformative. As the community danced and sang, a gentle breeze stirred the air, and the tree in the clearing began to bloom, its flowers vibrant and alive. It was as if Amina's spirit had returned, blessing the land and her people. From the ashes of betrayal rose the phoenix of forgiveness. The village healed, bonds were reforged, and Kemi learned that true love is selfless and that envy poisons the soul. Kemi fell to her knees before the tree, tears streaming down her face. The wind blew softly, carrying with it the whispers of the past. Now, Kemi was trapped in her sorrow, bound by the consequences of her jealousy. The tree whispered in the wind, carrying Amina's spirit, a reminder of what Kemi had lost, both her friend and her peace of mind. The village, once vibrant and full of life, now lay in a heavy silence. The absence of Amina cast a long shadow over the community. Kemi's days were filled with solitude, and her nights were haunted by dreams of Amina, her laughter replaced by haunting whispers. Each day the sun rose and set, but for Kemi time stood still. The weight of her actions pressed heavily upon her heart, and the village shared in her grief, their collective sorrow a testament to the depth of Amina's presence among them. The village elders convened under the ancient baobab tree, their faces etched with concern. They deliberated on the strange events that had unfolded, seeking guidance from the ancestral spirits. Seeking wisdom beyond their own, the elders performed rituals to communicate with the spirits, hoping for insight into the mysterious transformation and a path to healing for their troubled community. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a traveler arrived in the village. Dressed in tattered robes, he spoke of distant lands and ancient wisdom. Hearing of the village's plight, he offered a cryptic solution. To mend the fabric torn by envy, one must weave a new tapestry of unity. Seek the heart of the forest where the first tree stands, and there you shall find the key. Determined, Kemi embarked on a journey into the heart of the forest, guided by the traveler's words. The path was fraught with challenges, each step a test of her resolve and remorse. Through dense thickets and over rugged terrain, Kemi journeyed, her heart heavy with guilt but driven by a faint hope that redemption was within reach. At the heart of the forest, Kemi discovered an ancient tree, its roots entwined with glowing stones. As she approached, the ground trembled and a voice echoed from the depths. Only through selfless acts can the curse be lifted. Return to your village and let your actions speak louder than words. Kemi returned to the village, transformed by her experience. She dedicated herself to serving the community, mending broken relationships and honoring Amina's memory. Through unwavering dedication and acts of kindness, Kemi began to heal the wounds she had inflicted, her journey a testament to the power of remorse and the possibility of redemption. Seasons changed and the village slowly returned to its former vibrancy. The tree that had once been a symbol of sorrow now stood as a monument to forgiveness. Kemi, forever changed, continued her work, ensuring that the lessons learned would be passed down through generations. And so, the village thrived, its people united by the trials they had faced and the lessons they had learned, their story a timeless reminder of the destructive power of jealousy and the healing balm of forgiveness. The people linger on the ancient tree, its gnarled branches swaying gently in the wind. The leaves rustle softly, whispering secrets of times long past. A haunting, distant cry echoes through the forest, sending a shiver down the spine. Jealousy once unleashed does not fade. It takes root deep within the heart and grows into something far more powerful than love. Some curses cannot be broken, and some acts can never be undone. The scene transitions to a time long before the tragic events unfolded, a time when Amina and Kemi were inseparable. Their laughter echoed through the village as they played beneath the towering baobab tree, sharing dreams and secrets. But as the years passed, a subtle shift occurred. Kemi's admiration for Amina's beauty and grace transformed into envy, a green-eyed monster that gnawed at her insides. One evening, as the golden hues of sunset bathed the village, Kemi sought counsel from the village elder, a wise woman known for her knowledge of ancient rites. "Greetings, my elder, my heart is heavy with a burden I cannot bear alone. My friend's beauty eclipses mine and it fills me with a rage I cannot control. I seek your wisdom to rid myself of this torment." The elder's eyes narrowed, sensing the darkness in Kemi's heart. "Beware, child, for the path you contemplate is fraught with peril. The spirits do not take kindly to such treachery. Once the seed of jealousy is sown, it grows into a tree whose roots are deep and whose branches bear bitter fruit." But Kemi, blinded by her emotions, dismissed the elder's warnings. That night, under the cloak of darkness, she ventured into the forest to perform the forbidden ritual. She chanted incantations learned from whispered tales, her voice trembling with each word. The air grew thick with an unnatural stillness as she completed the rite, her heart pounding with anticipation. The next morning, the village awoke to an eerie silence. Amina was missing, and in her place stood the towering tree, its branches heavy with sorrow. The villagers gathered, their faces etched with confusion and fear, as they whispered curses and vengeful spirits. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of guilt crushed Kemi's spirit. She withdrew from the village, seeking solace in the very forest that had witnessed her betrayal. There she encountered the spirit of the forest, a being as old as time itself. "You have disturbed the balance, child. The act you committed cannot be undone by mortal means. The curse is now part of the land, and its roots intertwine with your own." Kemi fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded for forgiveness. But the spirit's gaze remained unyielding. Redemption is not granted lightly. You must embark on a journey to restore what was lost, facing trials that will test your very soul. Only then can you hope to lift the curse. And so, Kemi's quest began, a journey filled with challenges that would force her to confront her darkness, seek forgiveness from those she had wronged, and ultimately, find a way to free Amina's spirit from the confines of the tree. Through trials of fire and water, through encounters with beings both benevolent and malevolent, Kemi learned the true nature of jealousy and the heavy price of betrayal. She discovered that love, once tainted by envy, could only be purified through acts of genuine remorse and selfless courage. In the end, standing before the ancient tree, Kemi offered her heart in atonement. The tree trembled, its leaves rustling as if in response. Slowly, the bark began to peel away, revealing Amina, alive but changed, her eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. The path to forgiveness is long and fraught with pain. But through your journey, you have shown that even the deepest wounds can heal. The villagers rejoiced, witnessing the miracle that unfolded before them. The land, once burdened by the weight of jealousy, now breathed freely, its spirits at peace. Jealousy once unleashed does not fade. It takes root deep within the heart and grows into something far more powerful than love. Some curses cannot be broken and some acts can never be undone. But through humility, courage, and the willingness to face one's darkest fears, redemption is possible. The people pan out, the village bathed in the golden light of dawn, a new beginning born from the ashes of past transgressions. The ancient tree stands tall, its branches now bearing fruits of hope and renewal. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of darkness. What would you do if you were Kemi? Could you ever forgive yourself for such betrayal? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Epic Folktales for more tales of magic, betrayal, and the unexpected twists of fate. Until next time, may your heart be free from the poison of jealousy.